Hey, Brad. Thank you for that intro. Um, well, my name is not Brandon. My name is Ben Lamothe. I'm, as you mentioned, there we go, Salesforce Marketing Champion, Pardot Solutions Architect with BDO Digital. And I will be here to talk a bit about like I said, kind of the growing integration between Pardot and Sales Cloud. Um, so, just a little bit about myself. So I'm like I said, a 2X Salesforce Marketing Champion, 5X certified, and I have worked with Pardot for a number of years, both as a end user administrator for B2B organizations and also as a consultant, working with companies to help make the most out of their investment in Pardot and help to improve their overall Pardot implementation and their larger marketing efforts. So without further ado, let's kind of start going into some of the things that I think a Salesforce administrator needs to know about the kind of growing Salesforce Pardot integration. It's been something that's been growing quite a bit over the years. And there's things that if you're not terribly close to it, could very easily slip under your radar. But if you happen to manage a Salesforce instance or be or Sales Cloud or have a marketing department that uses Pardot, it's possible or probable that they've come to you about different needs. So this is just a little kind of summary about myself. Like I said, I'm the founder and I do run the Tampa Pardot community group here. I also admin the Pardot Geeks blog. I'm a member of the Pardot Technical Marketers Program Committee, and yes, I'm also a metalhead. So the first thing I wanted to kind of touch on is this is just kind of a short summary of some of the major enhancements that have happened between Pardot and Salesforce over the last several years. And there's things that are maybe not as big of a deal that I'm missing. I kind of tried to bring together some of the bigger ticket items, the things that really have a significant impact on the integration. These are significant enhancements. I'm not going to touch on all these in this presentation. I'm going to try to kind of hit the highlights. But there's a lot here that's happened, and there's more that will be happening in the future. With every release, the Pardot and Salesforce integration gets closer and gets more kind of intertwined. There was a time when you could use Pardot without actually having to even have a Salesforce instance. Those times are over. It's no longer possible to use Pardot without having a Salesforce instance of some kind. It is fully entrenched in Sales Cloud and cannot be used independent of it. So the first thing that I actually want to talk about is something. This was one of the bigger things that happened. This happened, I want to say, in 2019, called Connected Campaigns. And what this does is this unifies the campaign object in Salesforce with the campaign element or object in Pardot. What this does is this happens. What it does is this basically makes it so that whenever you create a campaign in Salesforce, it then auto creates that same campaign in Pardot, and Pardot becomes the Pardot campaign becomes read-only. That is important because as a Salesforce administrator, that's something that is going to be something that will come up. If it hasn't already and you have a team using Pardot, then it will come up very soon. And it has broad impacts on a number of things between Pardot and Sales Cloud. As I mentioned here, there is some configuration that is required to be able to achieve this. The Pardot can read these campaign records, but they can't write to them. They can only add campaign members as a part of a related list. And Connected Campaigns also enables some functionality that I'm going to kind of talk through a little bit in the next couple slides. This is a kind of visualization of what that looks like between Pardot and Sales Cloud. So over on the right, you have a campaign in Sales Cloud. You see here, it's the Salesforce UI, the campaign members, all the campaign fields. And then over here on the left, you have this campaign that's been replicated. What this does is this helps to keep naming conventions consistent, because it is very easy without connected campaigns to have a campaign named a certain way in Salesforce, and then marketing comes around and changes the name, doesn't use the same name, and so it can create a lot of confusion. What this does is this makes it so that for the campaign object, Salesforce is the master, and any campaign that you create gets created in Salesforce. There's a way to configure this. So if you are an organization that has several different campaign record types, it is possible to ensure that only specific campaign record types are visible to Pardot. If you've got sales campaigns that are not marketing campaigns, marketing shouldn't have any visibility to it, then you can make it so that they only see these specific record types for these specific campaign record types. But these are the fields that come in: the name, the cost, the tag, and then created dates. There's other things in here around campaign type, status, etc., that are not mappable between Salesforce and Pardot. There is no mechanism for the mapping between the two. So it really just brings over the name, whatever the investment is, and they use this for ROI, with the created date and who created it and updated it. This is a view of what that would look like in Pardot. So you have your campaigns here. These are obviously blurred out. And then you have these little Salesforce clouds. If there's a Salesforce cloud next to it, that means that campaign in Pardot is directly connected to a corresponding campaign in Salesforce. And if you click on the little cloud, it'll take you directly to that campaign record. And the connected campaigns, as I mentioned before, it enables certain functionality within Sales Cloud that extends the Pardot platform. Well, I like to kind of explain to people that sometimes people will think of Pardot in the same terms as a Marketo or an Eloqua, where all core functionality of Pardot is just within the Pardot app. And in this case, that's not accurate. Pardot is a extension of Sales Cloud. That is kind of the best way to think of it, and that's the direction that Salesforce has been pushing Pardot over the last several years. It is fully an extension of Sales Cloud. It is part and parcel of Sales Cloud, and so within Sales Cloud, you have a lot more functionality options. You can add a lot more things without having to necessarily enhance or change the core app functionality, for better or for worse. So when you think of Pardot, you need to think of Pardot both in the core app and then also things that you can do in Sales Cloud. And here are some examples of what that functionality would look like, kind of as an enhancement. So this is a campaign record type in Salesforce. These cards here you see are aggregate metrics that can be added to the campaign page layout in Salesforce. All of this data, email open rate, click-through rate, delivered, all this data comes directly from Pardot and is facilitated using connected campaigns. So how this would work is if you create a form or a landing page or an email, you would associate that specific marketing asset to this connected campaign. And by virtue of that connection, all the metrics and KPIs, there's now a bridge between Pardot and Sales Cloud that is allowing you to be able to see campaign level aggregate data of these Pardot assets. This is one of many different options that you can do. And the next one that I'm the biggest fan of, I think this is very cool, is fairly recently, Pardot created what are called engagement history dashboards. And if you're familiar at all with Einstein or Einstein/Tableau CRM, some of these widgets, some of these visualizations will look familiar. By having the connected campaigns enabled, your marketing team could come to you and say, hey, I would really like to add the engagement history dashboards to the lead, contact, account, opportunity, and campaign. those are all the assets. Those are all the objects that can support engagement history dashboards. And the benefit of these engagement history dashboards is now you get visualizations of the content engagement at a one-to-one level. So this is a specific lead, and this is showing me all of this lead's activities and engagement related to Pardot assets. And that is facilitated through connected campaigns. The other thing that's pretty cool is you have over here on the right, you have this engagement history module. This will also, in addition to being able to view it this way, if you don't want this, you don't have to have it. There is also a way to be able to view in a kind of order of action taken view of all of their Pardot engagement history. And this is an upgrade on what previously existed, which was an iframe of Pardot in a kind of a little like widget, little like sort of related list looking widget. Now this is a lightning element that can be added, and all of this is facilitated directly through connected campaigns. The other thing that comes with that is the ability to create related lists for your campaigns of all of the different assets that are associated. This is a benefit of connected campaigns. It's also a benefit of on the V2 connector, the latest iteration of the Pardot Salesforce connector. It now will sync these assets to the specific campaign and have it and be able to then view it as a related list for the object. So landing pages, it'll say, okay, for this campaign, I've got all these different Pardot landing pages, and it'll give you a list saying these are all of the landing pages associated with this campaign. These are all of the tracking links that were created. These are all the forms that were created, and these are all the list emails that were sent for this campaign. So if you want to get a total view, whether it's you, sales, leadership, saying I want to see everything that's been created and all the engagement activity for each of these assets, you can view it in a table view of just by going to the campaign. These are things that are relatively easy to add as an administrator. But they require the configuration of connected campaigns and the V2 connector. One thing I do want to I want to go back and make a note here is that this functionality here, the engagement history dashboards, is very cool. However, it is license driven. So there you do get a certain number of licenses per your Pardot license that you have, the overall Pardot license. And so not everybody on the team will be able to access this data. So you would have to determine who on your team you want to be, who needs to be able to see these engagement history dashboards. And then you would make that permission set assignment happen as you're in concert with marketing, basically asking who on the marketing and who on the sales team would need to be able to see this, and then just assigning those permission sets to those people so they can see these these dashboards. So the next thing I want to talk about is the Pardot Lightning App itself. So up until a couple years ago, the main way to access Pardot was through what's called the Pardot Classic app, which is can be accessed by visiting pi.pardot.com. Pardot, like Salesforce, like most things, has like most of their other apps, have been trying to push Lightning adoption, and they created a Pardot Lightning app in order to support that. To use the Lightning app, users do have to have a Salesforce license. That is kind of one of the things that if you do have a relatively limited number of licenses available, this may be a blocker for you if you're wanting to make sure that all of your users have access. Because if they don't have access, if they don't have a Salesforce license, they can't access the Lightning app. Obviously, this can only be accessed in Lightning Experience. And the other thing that's important is these Salesforce users that have Salesforce licenses must be mapped to corresponding users in Pardot to be able to access the app. If there is not mapping that happens, then they can't access it. There is some configuration that needs to happen with the Salesforce admin to get the app up and running, give visibility to the correct elements, and so on. One thing to note is that when you do enable the Pardot Lightning app, you may see these two Pardot apps in the app launcher. That can be kind of confusing because Pardot doesn't make a distinction. It literally, they both just say Pardot, and they both have the same logo. There is the legacy version of Pardot is accessible in Lightning, and it's an iframed version of pi.pardot.com. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go in and hide the Pardot Classic app to prevent people from kind of toggling. I've had clients who have had access to both, and I try to explain to them a click path, and it doesn't make any sense to them because I don't realize that they're still using a Classic app, and I'm explaining a Lightning click path. So I recommend, if you are going to make that migration to the Lightning app, to make sure that you hide the Classic app. It isn't required, but it's strongly recommended. So this is what the Lightning app looks like. It is in Salesforce, it is in Lightning, and you go and go into the app launcher, go to Pardot dashboard, and this is the first thing you see. I've added some things here, and this is all this part is all customizable. As with any other app, you can go in and you can select which tabs you want to be there and which ones you want hidden. You can create custom, as I've done here with B2B MA, which I'll talk about in a second. But everything is navigated from here, and this is the first page that you see. The Lightning app, like I said, lives in Lightning and has a lot of similarities to the user experience for Pardot Classic, but there's also significant differences. This is something that is strongly encouraged because enhancements and changes, updates, support, etc., for the Pardot Classic app is either going away or has gone away, and all upgrade and updating efforts are now happening specific to the Lightning app. One thing that tends to be kind of that tends to catch people is you do have to enable access to the Lightning app at the profile level, both in the app launcher when you're going into the app launcher and you're trying to identify who needs to get access. There's also the secondary app called it's called B2B MA Canvas, and that is one that also has to be given access permission at the profile level, so that they can actually load the canvas for the Pardot Lightning app. Access to the Pardot Lightning app, like I said, does require a Salesforce license. There's also a secondary part of this where they have to have the either the Sales Cloud user, Service Cloud user, or CRM user permission set. So they're going to consume a license, and they're going to consume a permission set for either Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, or CRM user. If they don't have those, then they won't be able to access one of those. If they don't have one of those, they won't be able to access Lightning. Actually, I'm going to go back for a second. So the one thing I do want to emphasize is that when I use the word migration and I want to add some kind of asterisks to that, this is not a Lightning migration. If you've just gone through a very painful Classic to Lightning migration, this is not of that level of effort. It's not that massive of a transition. It is pretty straightforward. There's the documentation for it, I think, might be like 8 or 10 pages long. It is not nearly as much of a level of effort as a more traditional Classic to Lightning migration. I mentioned earlier that it's no longer possible to access Pardot without a Salesforce instance, and that became very, very real earlier this year with the sunsetting of the Pardot user login on pi.pardot.com. It is no longer possible to have a individual login for Pardot that is different from a login for Salesforce. So, as I said, the user authentication system was discontinued. What this means is that if you are not on Lightning and you're still using the pi.pardot instance, you have to if you have team members that are like that, they're going to come to you and say, I need to get access. What you're able to do is you're able to give them what are called identity licenses. An identity license is a very bare bones license that literally just facilitates single sign-on between Pardot and Sales Cloud. That's all it really is meant to do. It doesn't give you access, like true access to Salesforce. If they were to try to log into Salesforce using the identity license, they'll see next to nothing. It literally just facilitates this SSO login. All customers will have at least 100 identity license bundled into their orgs. And so if you need to convert someone from a Pardot user to a SSO user, it's fairly straightforward. But it'll be a little bit confusing initially for the end users because it's going to be a different login experience. But something worth noting is this does not give users access to the Lightning app. This is not a login for the Lightning app. This is exclusively for people who are logging in using pi.pardot. This is an example of what that looks like. There used to be this other login that says login with your Pardot credentials and username and password or email and password, and that's gone now. The only option is login with Salesforce. When you do that, it's going to ask you, it's going to give you the whole SSO needs access to all these things. You're going to want to be logged in to your SSO, to your identity license already in Salesforce, and obviously it'll then facilitate that connection. But it will just give you access to the pi.pardot classic app. It's not going to give you access to more than that. The benefit to this is that it does enable you to use Salesforce-centric login features like using custom password policies, login hours, and also using MFA. That is far more customizable than what you can do right now with Pardot. The Pardot logins previously were pretty vanilla, and now if you need to restrict access to Pardot for SSO users with over certain hours and time, you can do that using this SSO function. So something else here to another really cool feature. This is something that it is important for admins to know. There are not a whole lot of admins that are terribly familiar with Tableau CRM/Analytics Studio. But for those who are, Pardot does have an analytics tool that is an app that is created that lives on top of Tableau CRM/Einstein. And it's called B2B Marketing Analytics and B2B Marketing Analytics Plus. The standard one is B2B Marketing Analytics, and it does require permissions to be able to access it. So there are implementation guides and access outlines. So if you do have a team that is wanting to be more creative and more proactive with their reporting, then they may, and they have B2BMA, then this is something that they may look to you to help with. What it does is it brings in data from Pardot and from Sales Cloud and marries it together in very engaging dashboard modules. It's definitely a lot more. It's easier to understand and consume, and it's definitely more exciting looking than a Salesforce dashboard, which isn't to say that that those dashboards can't be cool, but these are kind of another level, and they come out of the box with 5 or 6 dashboards that are pre-configured, that are pre-wired, and it's just meant to work. There is the ability to do customizations. However, it does require a more in-depth knowledge of the core Einstein platform. So you would need to know how to write SOQL, SAQL, and be familiar with JSON. Because if you don't know those, then it's going to be really tough to make configuration changes to the core source data that populates these dashboards. This is what that looks like. So when you go into the Einstein Tableau CRM, it's going to ask you, once you go to create a new app, which of these do you want to create? There's 2 here because there was a new release that's related to object syncing. Let's not worry about that for now, but you would just click on B2B Marketing Analytics since that's what's in your license. then you would have to just go through the implementation. Really, you're going to need to know what the Pardot account ID is, and just check all the different dashboards you want to include, and then you just hit go, and it runs and it sets up. And you will need to schedule data syncs. That's really important for the that's really important for keeping the data functioning, because the data is not necessarily going to run on its own. It will to a degree, but you do have to schedule it. And if you do have a lot of change that happens, a lot of updates, a lot of new information coming in with a higher regularity, you are going to want to schedule syncs more frequently. That's a conversation to be had with your marketing team to find out what's happening, what's kind of the ideal data sync. It'd be great if you had an Einstein resource who could help you, because this is some stuff that can be very complex and can get away from you pretty quickly. When you do implement the B2B MA dashboard, this is what you see. So in this case, you've got 5 out-of-the-box dashboards. When you click on one of these, it just auto populates. You're able to implement filters and things like that to modify the date ranges, to filter on specific assets and elements. So you have a lot of flexibility here. This is an example of the connected data. So this is connected data that patches into Sales Cloud. You do need to schedule these, because otherwise you can either schedule a full sync, which is just going to run the whole database regardless of how many updates have happened, if any. Incremental is only going to update records that have been updated. You're going to want to keep an eye on these, because sometimes there'll be errors you need to fix. There's field mapping that you need to make sure that is accurate. This is stuff that you're going to want to work with your marketing team on, understand exactly what it is that they need to be able to access, and the reports that they're needing to be able to see. So that's B2B MA at a very high level. I want to encourage you to, if you need more information, there's quite a bit of documentation out there that talks about implementation. But I do need to move on to the next. This is something that was a very big deal, that is a bit newer than the other stuff. This is Pardot Email Builder and Lightning Experience. And this is a brand new email building experience. And what's interesting is that this builder actually exists outside of Pardot. It is something that exists it looks a little bit like an app builder, like the UI, and it does require implementation. There's certain limitations to its functionality right now because it's so new, but it does integrate functionality related to Salesforce CMS. This is something that Pardot previously did not touch. And so if you are actively using the Salesforce CMS, this is something that you can configure to enhance the functionality. Marketing will need to be asked about individual user access, and it's something that users would need to be trained on. But if there's an interest, if they've heard about it, this is something that may come across your desk or come into your email saying, hey, I want to see about this email builder experience. There's a decent amount of documentation, and if you need more help, your account executive could probably help you out. This is what that looks like at a high level. So you see, I'm technically in the Pardot app see here, but I'm in this tab called Email Content. And so the UI here looks like Salesforce, because it is. But the actual building functionality itself is a little different. You can't add this as a tab, like I said, into the Pardot app. This is what the actual email building experience looks like, and this is why I said it looks a little bit like App Builder, because you've got a lot of stuff here that doesn't look like Pardot really at all. It's because you're not in the Pardot app. You're in the email builder, and it's just a very different experience. And access to this does have to be configured. So if it does come across your desk, this should trigger, at the very least, a 1 or 2 conversations with marketing to understand why they want to do it, understand if they are clear about how this works and the limitations of it, because it's not just turning something on and it's going to run. There's definitely build and customization that has to happen, access and licenses, not licenses, but permission sets that have to be enabled to be able to, for these people to be able to access the email builder. And this is the last, I think it's the last, one of the last. This is something that's also fairly new, and this is more relevant to enterprise users, this concept called Pardot business units. Business units are separate databases within a Pardot account that allow Pardot customers to partition their prospects. And it's fairly new, but it does require configuration within Sales Cloud because it is filtering different records by different flags or different field values. So field value X is only going to send records to business unit X. User X should only be available for user X. It does eliminate the need for complex sharing rules by using what I kind of was just describing, this marketing data sharing concept that I'll talk about in a second. But it is, like I said, it does require configuration. Normally you have 2 business units, but if you have a enterprise level organization, then you may have needs for more. If you've got several brands, then you may need to have several different business units. This prevents the need to have several subscriptions to Pardot or several licenses. You can have 1 license and then just pay for subsequent business units. They would all connect to the same Salesforce CRM, the same Salesforce instance. This is kind of visually what this looks like. It's kind of an oversimplification, but you've got you have Salesforce down here, which is the main Sales Cloud CRM. Then you've got 3 business units. You've got Asia, EMEA, and Americas. So the marketing team for Asia may not need to access the EMEA. So you can configure it where a marketing team user that is in Asia does not have access to the EMEA business unit, and EMEA doesn't have access to Americas. But let's say there's a director of marketing over Asia and EMEA. He or she needs access to both business units. So that can be configured to allow that person to access these 2, but not the Americas. And you can divide records by these different business units using what's called marketing data sharing. So in this case, I only want to see leads and contacts where, with this explicit criteria, where let's say marketable equals true. That's just an example. But if you say division equals EMEA, then say, okay, I only want to see records where division equals EMEA. It is only going to bring in leads that equal where their division equals EMEA. Same thing for opportunities and accounts. It'll only bring in EMEA accounts, opportunities, and leads or contacts. And that's how you segment by each business unit. So at a higher level, you'll be able to say, okay, I have these 3 different divisions. I only want EMEA in here, Asia in here, Americas in here. And then you divide up your users accordingly. As a Salesforce admin, you're going to have to do some configuration. And there's going to be several conversations with your marketing team to be able to achieve this. Business units they're planning to do quite a bit of enhancement. And this is something to keep an eye on, especially as your organization grows and you have more needs. If you've got more deeper segmentations of your audience or of your customers or really any kind of divisions, if they get deeper and they have very unique marketing objectives and audiences that don't overlap, if that's kind of a main thing, if customers A from division A aren't in division B, then you could very easily use these business units this way. So that was kind of rapid fire of some of the things that, as a Salesforce admin, things that you might want to know and keep in mind for the Pardot Salesforce integration. And if there's any questions, I would be happy to take them. There's a question asking if we can configure MDS based on product. So MDS based on product, if you're talking about product, in Salesforce, like the object, then no, that's not possible right now. If you were to have that as a field with a pick list, for example, then yes. But the actual product object on opportunities, that is not possible at this time. Hopefully in the future. MDS is very powerful, and but it's also there. It also tends to be better for larger organizations that have deeper divisions among their customers. So it's generally not necessary if all your customers are kind of, there's some overlap where, like, dividing it by products, for example. We say product A, product B, product C. If customer A might buy product B and product C, then that's probably not a good use case for business units. It's better to have these kind of solid divisions for reporting, for access, for security, and things like that. All right, well, I don't see any more questions coming through, so I appreciate. There's a question, train on Sandbox. I'm not sure what that is. But Pardot does have sandboxes, but it's not the same sandbox as Salesforce. I would recommend reviewing that, because people can get caught up in that. They will think that a Pardot sandbox works the same way, and it definitely does not, unfortunately. Okay, well, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Thanks to everybody from CenCal for letting me kind of hang out and talk about Pardot. Feel free to reach out if you guys have any more questions.